What's up, metalheads? Welcome to the Scrap Metal Podcast, the show for the misfits who've been listening to the same music since high school. I'm your host, John von Frankenstein, and joining me today is my metal thrashing mad co-host, Chris. Chris, I gotta ask you, how you feeling?
I gotta say, I am feeling nautical.
Nautical? You're off sailing the seas?
Absolutely.
Do you like my beans? Or what is it? No, do you like my lobster? What is this feeling of nauticalness, nautical whimsy, if that be what you wish? Does this have anything to do with how you're keeping your heavy metal street cred?
You know, it just might have something to do with my heavy metal street cred, because earlier today, I went on a lighthouse sightseeing cruise.
Oh my God, so you did see Willem Dafoe and Robert Pattinson.
I did indeed, and I made sure not to kill any gulls. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. We went out into the Long Island Sound. We took the very long drive out to Orient Point, took the ferry out from there, saw a bunch of offshore lighthouses, which I think the guy said that, like, this area in the Long Island Sound between Long Island and Connecticut is, like, the most offshore lighthouses in the world. And, like, they're all just, like, right next to each other. So that was really cool. There was a lot of really cool lighthouses we saw. And it was a beautiful day. We had great weather, so lots of great pictures. But this nautical feeling of being out at sea, it made me want to listen to the album Sea Savage by Gamma Bomb, which prominently features a lighthouse on the cover. So once I got back from this sightseeing cruise, I immediately listened to Sea Savage. Obviously, the title track is great. Miami Super Cops, Iron Blood, Electric Pentacle, some great songs off of this album. I know I've gushed about Gamma Bomb and this album before, but yeah, I was feeling nautical. I was out at sea, and I felt the need to listen to the album Sea Savage by Gamma Bomb.
How could you not? I mean, the wind in your hair, the salt from the ocean, you know, caressing your skin as the waves crash onto the shore. I can totally see it. I can see yourself being out there. I can see you being out there on the starboard point of the ship and saying, raise the hatches, or up periscope, or whatever the fuck you say as a sailor man.
I was really just there because I think one of the lighthouses was for sale. So I started fantasizing about a life where I wore cable knit sweaters and was just a lighthouse keeper. So
I've got a couple of them. I can let you borrow some if you want. I love that, though. So you had, like, almost a somewhat a feeling of domestication, which is really funny. Like, thinking about purchasing a lighthouse, I've been actually trying to purchase a home, so I've been doing, like, you know, crazy searches all around different neighborhoods, and while doing that, there's a bunch of yard sales going on, and so I happened across a couch that made me feel so fucking metal. They had, I don't know if the owner had, like, printed it on there or if they had sewn it into the leather, but there was absolutely a death metal logo on there. And then I ended up realizing that it was just the cracks in the leather. Much like the meme that we've all seen about, you know, your favorite death metal logo, and it's just a bunch of cracks in the leather of a couch. I love that. And it made me think about all these crazy ass logos that death metal, black metal, grindcore, and all these other different genres of music love to use. So I figured, why not do a deep dive on some of the craziest heavy metal logos that we can find? But not just the logos. Why not look beyond the logo, through the logo, if you will, into what the band was truly trying to say. And therefore, we're going to be exploring the Heavy Metal Rorschachs, what these logos are actually saying to us. Chris, are you excited to explore Heavy Metal Rorschachs?
I am so excited to take a look at these Heavy Metal Rorschachs because as a teenager and a young man, I was getting into heavy metal and finding more extreme styles of music, and I would see these logos, and I would think to myself, why do all these bands have logos that look like my parents having sex? And then I realized that I was just looking at really fucked up logos and was kind of projecting my own, like, Rorschach test onto these logos. Because once I realized that there was words and letters in there and not images that like are scarring to my brain. Like these logos actually have something to say. And it's not about my own like Oedipus complex or something.
Yeah, Freud would be proud of us during this episode, I think. Oh my God. What do you think it is about these crazy ass logos that we love so much?
I think it is just similar to how my exploration of music has always been to find something more extreme. I think it's the same idea. We are taking things to the next extreme. You know, you look at thrash metal bands who all have really pointy logos. You know, they're really sharp logos. You know, Metallica made a ninja star out of their logo. You know,
yeah,
and I
true.
think the natural progression is to just get more extreme and more illegible and just more like disgusting. You know, some of these bands that I was listening to and looking at these logos, like the logo matches just how disgusting the band sounds.
Yes.
And
yes.
I think that's a big part of it as well, is you want a logo that represents what your band is going to sound like. And so that's why these thrash metal bands have their pointy logos, and that's why these grindcore bands have the most disgusting looking logos that you could see God knows what in them.
Yeah, you can't convince me that half of these logos actually say what they claim to say.
Yeah, we're
and we'll get into that. We're getting a little ahead of ourselves, but we'll get into that for sure. I love the fact that, like you said, the music is obviously making its own statement, but the band clearly wants to say like, hey, here's what you're in for. So look at this logo and whatever you think it's going to sound like, yeah, it's going to be that, but even worse. And I've always been fascinated by the fact that you can just create these crazy images out of the logos, like looking at the negative space between everything and then letting your mind go crazy and letting your creativity kind of get the better of you and creating an all new logo within the logo.
Yep.
So this was a really, really great idea. And I guess we've got to kind of start off sort of simple, right? Like you've always got babies first.
Yeah.
So I would posit that Baby's first crazy logo would start with Cradle of Filth because it's just extreme enough to feel cool, but not too extreme where it's completely illegible. In fact, if this were an iceberg, this would probably be the very top of the iceberg, the easy tier, if you will. So, like, checking out Cradle of Filth's logo, again, it's not anything that's super hard to decipher. You can tell the letters apart. You can tell that everything is spaced evenly. You can read it. It's just the letters are all really stylized.
Yeah, the logo is, like we're saying, one of the easiest to read of the extreme metal logos. Like we're saying, each individual letter is very stylized. Lots of cilia, maybe?
Okay. Yeah.
You know, tails and things pointing out of the edges of the letters, but it's still very legible. We're saying, definitely not one of the logos where we're like, that doesn't say what that says. That very much says Cradle of Filth. Now, that being said, someone who does not know it says Cradle of Filth might struggle to figure out what it says. But I think for those of us that are familiar with Cradle of Filth and know what it says, yes, this is one of the easier logos to read.
I think that that's going to be a common theme through this, where it's once you know what it says, you can start to pick things out from it. You can start to form the letters on there, and you can start to kind of figure out and decipher what it means. It's kind of like exploring hieroglyphics and saying like, okay, I understand what this means because I've spent the time, I've invested the time listening to this style of music, and I know what these logos look like, so I can kind of start to tell these things apart. But like we said with Cradle of Filth, it is just like the easiest level that you can start your game up on. And I remember when I first started listening to Cradle of Filth, I loved the fact that their logo looked very extreme, especially compared to a lot of the music that I was listening to at the time, when I was still really listening to Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park. And then I had like a Cradle of Filth t-shirt that I had gotten. Yeah. And it said like, Twisted Freak of Nature or something like that on the back with Danny Filth's face like super, super big. And I was like, this makes me feel really cool. This makes me feel really intense and like unapproachable. Like I want people to know that I listen to really extreme metal. And now listening to them, they are like definitely the tamest of the extreme metal lot. But it still at least gave me the introduction to the more extreme bands that we're going to be getting into. And with songs like Funeral in Carpathia, Dusk in Her Embrace, 13 Autumns and a Widow, and Saffron's Curse, the whole entire Midian album, I've talked about before how much I love that album, but Saffron's Curse is one of my favorite songs on the entire album. And so those songs fit exactly what the logo looks like. It is somewhat extreme, but still gothic and stylized and vampiric kind of looking, but not too unapproachable, much like the music. It's easy to get into them. But Chris, what was the first band that you started gravitating towards on your exploration of these Heavy Metal Rorschach logos?
As luck would have it, the moment we decided that we were going to give ourselves a Heavy Metal Rorschach test, I happened to see someone recommend a band on Reddit that I could not read what the logo said. And that was the band Revocation. Now, what was very interesting to me about this band's logo is that much like the thrash metal logos, their logo is very pointy. Lots of sharp lines. It doesn't have the very sloppy and organic lines you see in a lot of these other logos. It is a very sharp, weaponized logo. But I listened to the song, which happened to be Re-Crucified, which features Trevor Sternad and Corpse Grinder. Which was awesome to find this band with an illegible logo and features Corpse Grinder on it. So I listened to the song and I listened to some other songs from Revocation. And what I really liked about the band is that it was thrashy death metal. You know, it was harsh vocals, not those like guttural Corpse Grinder or Barn style vocals. In a lot of ways reminded me of the band Death and Chuck Schuldiner. Some other songs that I really liked were the Grip Titans, Enter the Hall, and their cover of Dyer's Eve by Metallica. So that was really cool to find that. But yeah, Revocation is a band that, honestly, I was surprised when I saw their logo because as we get into it, and as I've already mentioned, so many of these logos have a very disgusting and organic, like they look like they're made out of like flesh or something, whereas
phlegm, maybe even.
But this logo is very much the pointiness that you expect of thrash metal bands like Anthrax or Slayer, or even Metallica. But because of how illegible it is, you know that it's not just your normal, everyday, vanilla thrash. This is this is a very extreme style of music, and you see this in a lot of logos. So it's surprising when logos don't do it. The logo is very symmetrical. The points are the same on both sides. And there's some logos that I found where they are not symmetrical at all, which just adds to how fucked up they look. But this was this was definitely a logo that, like, based on the logo alone, I was like, I think I'm going to like this band. And I was glad that I did. Yeah.
Now, I was so happy to see that you had brought Revocation up in your notes, because you and I actually share a somewhat like 7 degrees of separation from Kevin Bacon sort of thing, with one of the ex-band members. Dan Gargiulo is actually a Five Towns alum.
Oh,
so
boy.
We went to school with Dan. I was in a guitar ensemble with Dan.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and another guitarist that's going to make an appearance later on this episode as well. But Dan is a great fucking guitarist. Like, him and this other guitarist that we'll get into a little later on in the episode used to play like Zelda theme songs and shit, like video game theme songs. And it was it was fascinating because it was an acoustic guitar ensemble. And here we are with nylon string guitars. And here you've just got like a Final Fantasy theme going on in the corner. It's awesome.
Yeah.
So it's just like a very clear hint to the kind of talent that this guy has. And his work with his within his time with Revocation was awesome. So impressive. And yeah, they are, I wouldn't say that they're on the disgusting end of the iceberg that we're going to be making our way down. I'd even say that they are on like the easy tier, maybe. Because again, you can kind of make out the lettering. It's fairly clear, maybe bordering on the intermediate level for sure, but it's not going too crazy. I guess another band that kind of sits on this same sort of easy tier would be the band Marduk. And they were really cool. This was I had heard the name before, but I'd never actually listened to them. And what I liked about their logo, which I love when black metal bands do this and just like extreme metal bands do this, that they have the number of the beast incorporated into their logo. So anytime a band throws a 666 in there, I remember like all through high school, I would draw like pentagrams with like candles and 666 all over my notebooks and stuff like that. So anytime I see a metal logo that incorporates that, I'm like, yes, this is speaking to me on the most primal of levels. But their songs, The Sun Turns Black as Night, Still Fucking Dead, Beyond the Grace of God, and this one threw me for a fucking loop because I thought it said Vin Diesel's name when I was putting my notes together at 2:30 in the morning the other night. But Dracula Vin Domni din Noi in Transylvania is a great fucking song. Even though it may not just roll off the tongue super easy, their logo actually does roll into the eyes fairly well. So again, it's kind of almost got like this ethereal smoke look to it with the pointed like thorns similar to Cradle of Filth's logo, and then incorporating like some devil wings or bat wings in the background with the upside down cross and the 666 on there. I just like, I got all giddy seeing this logo. I loved it so fucking much.
Yeah, it was interesting seeing the upside down cross in it. I know we had shared some images with each other of someone either purposely or accidentally posting pictures of Sodom and Venom patches upside down and thinking they say Wodos or Wovoa. And it's like, oh, are these like Finnish black metal bands? It's like, no, you're looking at those logos upside down. But seeing the upside down cross made me think of my brother just told me a story that he saw someone posting a picture of some free patches they got, and they post a picture of the patch, and they're like, hey, I don't recognize this band. Like, what are they? And the band logo happened to have like upside down crosses in it, which sounds like Mayhem. I'm not sure if it was Mayhem or not, but they had the logo oriented so that the crosses were right side up. And someone had to be like, your upside down crosses are upside down. You need to flip the logo again, and then you'll have it right. But yeah, so seeing the upside down cross made me think of that. And even Death, I think in one of their logos, the T was very much an upside down cross. I feel like Chuck redesigned the logo a couple times to kind of tone down the religious aspect, and it became more of a normal T. But I know originally that T also looked like an upside down cross.
I love a good upside down cross thrown in as a T.
Yeah.
I think, well, what did we use back with the Metal Crusade? We used like a sword, right, for the T?
Yeah, I think it was very much a sword that probably looked like an upside down cross. It's
purposefully so.
Talking about upside down crosses makes me think of one of my favorite things that happened when I saw Slayer for the first time. They go into South of Heaven, and there's crosses being projected behind them.
Okay.
And then like during the intro, it's like kind of slow, and Tom comes in with the vocals and it's still slow, but then the crosses slowly start to rotate. And by the time he gets to the line where like it kind of picks up where he's like, before you see the light, you must die. The crosses are now all like upside down. The lights are now red, and it's like, yep, now we've turned the crosses upside down. We're in that, satanic territory, and it's upside down crosses are awesome.
It's again, it's just the same sort of thing that you just draw in your notebooks all the time. Like as a kid, you're just gonna get as many upside down crosses as you possibly can within the margins of your notebooks. But another band that I think falls under that easy tier, it's starting to kick up the extremes of this, like, I don't know, to me they look like thorns. It makes me think of a thorny branch. Not a horny branch, that's something completely different. We'll leave that to Sam Raimi. Is the band Dissection. And their logo, you've got like the thorny branches, you've got some blood dripping on there. And if I'm looking through the logo, if I'm looking through to the deeper meaning of it, it starts to just look like bile. It starts to look like bile and viscera. So we're approaching that direction that we want to get into for some really disgusting music. Their songs were Dead Angels Lie, Night's Blood, and Soul Reaper are a really good time. Again, the music fits the look of the logo. And I think that's really important. Like, you don't want something that is going to be misrepresenting what you're going to be getting into. Sometimes it's really fun to be taken by surprise.
Yeah.
When you see a logo or you see the images that a band is projecting out there, and then you listen to them and it's not exactly what you thought you were going to get, a la Ghost. But with a lot of these bands, it is that sort of like, hey, before there were kiosks at FYE, before you could just go on to Apple Music and listen to the whole entire song without having to commit to actually buying the album, here's what you can expect. Here's our logo. And that was kind of like their elevator pitch, right?
Yeah.
Like, if you see a really gnarly, disgusting looking logo, that's going to make you want to pick up that album or that CD or that cassette tape. So I think a lot of it was like just really genius marketing, you know?
Yeah, because like we're saying, before you really had an opportunity to listen to a band or listen to an entire album before buying it, you were going based on the band's logo and what the album cover looked like.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you are buying, you know, back in the day, Ghost would have pissed a lot of people off because you have the whole, you know,
yes, absolutely,
Salem's Lot and upside down cross as a T in the band's name, and then you put it on and it's like Kiss.
Yeah.
You're going to be disappointed. So if you have a logo like Dissection has that looks like a ball of thorns that has cut someone up, something fierce.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You know, that is the perfect representation of the music, and their, I would imagine their album covers are also representing what you're about to get into.
It's a lot like a crown of thorns. You know, it's a lot like that. And then with the blood dripping off of it, again, we're going into these really dark religious themes. I love it. It's like high school all over again, baby. But this is what's really fun about an episode like this. Getting to just kind of embrace and applaud the ridiculousness of heavy metal.
Yeah.
Because we've talked about it again and again, like the seriousness that metal is approached with so often. And the fact that like a lot of guys don't allow themselves to have fun with this crazy ass music.
Yeah.
Some of it is just so... I saw a meme recently. I talk about memes a lot. I'm online quite a bit. I'm sorry. But there was this guy like, this next song is going out to all you extreme fuckers out in the crowd. It's called... And the dude just goes... It's the funniest fucking thing because it's so true. It's so true. It's kind of like the videos of Corpse Grinder doing the intro to I Come Blood.
Yeah.
It's like... coming blood out of your cock. And it's like... Dude, this is fucking ridiculous.
I'll never forget, see, because I've seen there's multiple videos of Corpse Grinder doing that. This is a song about blood coming out of my cock. One of the videos I saw, he says that, and it zooms in on the security guard who goes like wide-eyed, like, did this fucker just say what I think he just said?
Yeah.
And like, that's why we do it, because
exactly.
we are entertained by it because we know how stupid it is, and we love seeing someone like that security guard react in that way and be like, what kind of fucking band is this?
Yeah, exactly. A band that like I was so surprised that Cannibal Corpse didn't really make the cut for this episode, in my opinion anyway, just because their logo was... Like, I could have used Cradle of Filth or Cannibal Corpse. Their logos are very, very easy to read. But a band who is still on that easier tier, but definitely starts approaching the more extreme ends of this metal that we love so much, is Crown Magnetar. Now, I found them through, like, looking at pictures of, I think it was a recent death metal tour, and they were one of the bands on there. And I was like, oh, the name sounds really cool. I hadn't seen their logo yet. I saw the logo and I was like, oh, okay. This looks really cool. It's like, you mentioned it before, almost like this weaponized with revocation. Like, wasn't there a Hard Times article where it was like the top 10 band logos that you could use as a weapon during a zombie apocalypse
I'm
or
sure
something
there
along those lines?
absolutely has been a Hard Times headline, an article about that.
But this would be one of those logos. You have the symmetry. You have, now it's no longer a crown of thorns. Now it's looking a lot like roaches. Again, if I'm looking through the logo, trying to see the deeper meaning, it's like roaches. So it grosses me out. Like the hairs on their legs and shit like that bugs have. I fucking hate that shit. But it looks very weapon-esque. It looks very much like an implement of death. And it fits the music really fucking well. This is another one of those like gargle metal bands where the vocalist is just, this dude is insane. The music is phenomenal. I spent a lot of the past couple days listening to them. I kind of kept coming back to them because their music really impressed me in terms of the extremeness of it, or the extremity of it, and the technicality of it too, was just very, very impressive. So Nail Funeral, Despised from Seed, Unholy Neck Stab, and Immolation, just a couple of the songs that you can find on, I think, their most recent album. That it's like, it's pummeling. And it's this, you get a lot of these super fast bursts of double bass where it's like, okay, no human should be able to play this quickly. How is this possible? And I love that trend that we're starting to get now, where drummers are starting to get more and more extreme. Some people may complain and say like, oh, it's because they're using triggers. Using a trigger just means that you're going to get the same sound whenever you hit the drum. You still have to physically play the drum. So even though you're using a trigger to have that clicky sound, you still have to be good enough to be able to play it.
Yeah.
But I was just so impressed by these guys. And I love when you see a logo that just looks like it can be used to make your way out of a zombie-infested mall. You know, it's like, that's the most fun. It goes back to, again, wanting to be as extreme as possible for the reactions that we're going to get. And that feeling of, I'm in high school, I'm bored in chemistry class, and I'm going to draw the coolest looking logo in the margins of my notebook that I possibly can, just for the fucking fun of it. And it always winds up looking like a fucking ninja star for some reason.
I mean, ninja stars are cool, you know?
Yeah.
So you can't blame these guys for all wanting to make a logo that looks like it could be thrown like a shuriken at your enemy.
Yeah, we can't take that away from them.
You know, I mean, their logo looks like a serrated blade. Like it's either that or a bread knife, but either way, it's very pointy.
Another band that has the pointiness down to a fucking T is Signs of Abnormality. Now, I had a really, really funny experience with these guys. Chris, I've shared this with you already, but I'll share it with our beautiful audience. I love the trend that we saw last year all over social media of Zeb Ross, the dude who would do like the crazy like clogging dance on a plank of wood and like would introduce his fellow dancer like with the snazziest just wave of his arms. I fucking loved this dude. And I've missed seeing Zeb Ross all over everyone's social media. So when I saw this cowboy just whipping his fucking leg in circles, like doing a windmill with his leg, first off, I'm like, that man's ACL is suffering. Second, I was like, who the fuck is this fucking band that is playing underneath this video? because it was like the call out for the breakdown, and then it busts into the breakdown, and Homeboy's leg is just flying all over the place. So I was like, this is awesome. So I post it to my story, and they reach out to me and like react to me having shared their music. And I was like, hey, thanks for introducing me to your nasty ass riffs with this goofy ass dude. And they were like, oh, thanks for the support. Ooh woo. And I'm like, they could have stopped there. They could have stopped. They didn't have to go that far. But it made me fucking laugh because you can tell that these guys just have a really good fucking time. Yeah. These are not guys that are taking themselves too seriously. In fact, they have a song called Doug Dimmadome, owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome, and they use a sample from Fairly Odd Parents to intro a fucking death metal song. Yeah. It's fucking genius. It's so much fun and so much heavier than it feels like they have any right to be. But I had a lot of fun listening to them. They have a song called Emo Couple Wants to Fuck More Than They Want to Die. That made me fucking crack up. They have another song called Putas y Menudos. Their song Grasshopper, Job for a Slammer, and The Sharp One, which just talks about their logo. They've got fucking bat wings on there, like Mayhem's logo. They've got the thorns and the sharpness going on. Again, they have the symmetry, which is so important. Like, I wonder if that's one of the main things that they look into, because when you're stylizing letters the way that a lot of these bands do, how do these guys come up with this stuff? How do they figure out how to just make the letters that shouldn't be symmetrical look symmetrical?
It's gotta be just a mix of artistic talent and fucking around until it looks right. You know, you just keep drawing and erasing and drawing and erasing until it looks the way it does. And it's like, as impressed as I am with the symmetry, I am always more impressed with the types of things that read the same upside down, or that will read a different word when you flip it upside down. You know, it's so stuff like that is always cool, which I don't think I found any band logos like that. I'm sure they exist, but I didn't find any here. But with some of these,
I'm sure
with some of these logos, I don't even believe that the words that they're telling me are in the band name are in the logo. So for all I know, you can read it, you know, any direction you turn it, it's reading the correct way. But it's very symmetrical, and it's definitely just putting the letters in, because I've done that where I come up with like, I pick a word that sounds cool, and I'm like, this is my band name now. And for a week, that's my black metal band name, and I stylize it in the margins of my notebook. And then a week later, I formed a new death metal band with a different name because I learned the name of like something in science class, which is how we got anthrax in the first place. So the band, not the disease. But yeah, I have to imagine it's just someone maybe in the band, maybe someone who's a friend of the band, just messing around until they come up with something that looks adequately fucked up yet symmetrical.
Yeah. Chris, what do you see when you look through this logo?
I see a dog that won't shut up.
I see it speaks to you.
I think what I see, and it's something that I see, is I love the tendrils that come out.
Yeah.
And I love that whether it's wings or at time looks like lightning or blood or who knows what. But I always love when you have those tendrils or those accents, because it's a more extreme version of what Metallica did. You know, with the little hooks,
the flourishes,
with the it's very much, you know, like you said, flourishes. It is calligraphy by a sociopath. You know,
yes. Logos by Ed Gein, coming this summer to these. Never mind.
Instead of painting with Bob Ross, it's painting with H.R. Geiger, you know?
Yeah, exactly. and to bookend this easier tier of extreme Rorschach logos that we're going to be going through, we have to shout out the band Entombed. Entombed just has a cool looking extreme black metal logo.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, a good old Swedish death metal. You know, songs like Left Hand Path, Drowned, Premature Autopsy, Living Dead, all really, really good shit. And their logo looks like their guitar tone sounds. Their guitar tone sounds like they were just like, we're going to turn up all the bass all the way, and all the sizzle of the treble all the way, and all the distortion up all the way. And it's just going to sound like a buzzsaw. And that's exactly what the fucking logo looks like. It's not too extreme. It's not too simple, but it just fucking works. And I really like these guys. Like Wolverine Blues was, they kind of lost me there, but the first two albums are really, really fucking solid.
Yeah, and as a logo, I'm always a fan of bands that use a variant of Old English, you know?
OE, if you will.
Yeah. So I'm always a fan of that, you know? Not to like, isn't it Bathory that just has like all capitals in Old English? Like that's like it's cool, but I guess like I'm sure at the time you're like, oh my god, this is so fucking cool, but now you're like, that's like, look at what these guys were doing.
Yeah.
Eventually, like you couldn't come up with something cooler than just all caps.
Yeah.
I can do that in Microsoft Word.
It was someone just going enhance, 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 and then we get to like one of the last bands that we're going to talk about. They're like, fuck, go back. Chris, what genre would you say kind of has the biggest market share with craziest fucking logos?
You know, my instinct going into this was to say black metal. You know, I expected to hear a lot of very extreme metal and very extreme black metal, and I know there are some black metal bands to discuss as we continue this discussion, but I was surprised how often I found things like, you know, bands calling themselves brutal death metal or grindcore. Like, those were some of the most fucked up logos. And so, like, because I think of, like, when I think of black metal, I think of a band like Immortal, and their logo is very legible. You can very much read what it says. And Abbott, who he's no longer in the band, he's now doing his own solo thing, but like, he's also someone who has fun with it. It's one of the scariest looking motherfuckers in metal, and he's a giant fucking goofball.
Yeah.
But it's so, yes, I expected a lot of shitty quality true cult black metal, and we certainly got some of that.
For sure.
But there was a lot more, and maybe it just happened to be the bands I was finding, because 5 minutes before we hit record, I was still finding bands with fucked up logos. But a lot of the bands I found were very extreme, brutal death metal or just grindcore, and was just some of the most obnoxious fucking music I've ever heard.
Yeah. So, like, going off of your initial impressions before starting this, I went through the same sort of thing. I was like, oh, I'm just going to pull a bunch of fucking black metal bands because they have the craziest logos, of course. And there really weren't that many. Most of them are fairly legible. Most of them are a lot of the Old English or just like simple script. But then you have Dark Throne.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, yeah, this is going to fucking work. Where this is where we start to get into those levels of illegible logos, the true Rorschach's test, where we can look through this and it looks like a spider trying to do the sun salutation, and you can make it out. So this is like at the very top of the intermediate tier. You can make it out, but it takes you a bit. Like you said before, someone who is uninitiated with death metal and black metal logos, just extreme logos to begin with, is going to have a hard time deciphering this. Yeah. But when you've spent the amount of time and hours that we have listening to and obsessing over these logos and these Rorschach tests, if you will, it becomes a little bit easier to pick them out. And Dark Throne is awesome. It's two fucking guys. Like, you know, they were there at the very fucking beginning, and I know that that has a whole history of its own, so we won't get into that stuff. Yeah. But Dark Throne, they are awesome. When you talk about like shitty sounding true cult black metal, they are the quintessential shitty sounding black metal band. Yes. With songs like Transylvanian Hunger, Scald Satanis Soul, and Under a Funeral Moon. This is exactly what you think of when people are like, oh yeah, they recorded it with a fucking Casio microphone. Yeah. You know, on a little like 10-inch speaker. with like a Metal Zone distortion pedal running through it. And then the vocals are recorded in a bathroom 40 feet away.
Yeah.
That's what these fucking guys sound like. And it's great for it, though. It just fits. It fits. Yeah. Again, it fits with the fucking logo.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's other songs that I really enjoy are Summer of the Diabolical Holocaust, just because how can you not love a song called Summer of the Diabolical Holocaust? In the Shadow of the Horns is another really good song. But yeah, it's when someone jokes about that black metal is only good if it was recorded on a Hello Kitty karaoke machine. This is the band they're talking about. And the logo definitely informs that. Like, as I look at it, it looks like the nervous system of an organism. Like, it just looks like a mess. Yeah. And as I was looking at some of these bands, I happened to be checking out some of the band logos while I was at work, and I happened to show this logo to someone, and they're like, I see Throne. I'm like, okay, so, you know, it's not the hardest to read, but they couldn't tell that it all said Dark Throne, so it's but yeah, it's definitely a mess.
Yeah, for sure.
And musically, it sounds like a mess. So, job well done, Dark Throne. There is no one truer or cultier than you guys.
Suffocation is also up there on the easier end of the intermediate tier. And we've talked about Suffocation before. We've talked about them in our Black History and Metal episode. Terrence Hobbs is a fucking legend.
Yeah. But
their music is just fucking great, and it's fucking brutal, and I'm so happy that they're from New York. It's so cool to be able to say that. Their songs, Immortality Condemned, their songs Immortally Condemned, Pierced from Within, and Brood of Hatred are just a couple of really good examples. If you've never listened to Suffocation and you kind of look at this logo and say to yourself, like, okay, this is easy enough for me to get into. Truly, this band can't be that extreme. It's going to be a slap in the fucking face.
Yeah.
And you're just going to be like knocked off your fucking ass listening to any one of these songs. I'm sure that we've talked about a couple of their other songs in the Black History and Metal episode, but Chris, was it cool to revisit Suffocation again for this episode?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like we've said, we're always going to champion New York bands. Suffocation is a band that I'm also familiar with because my brother loves listening to death metal. He's always talking about Suffocation. I think he owns several Suffocation t-shirts. But yeah, it's great to see New York death metal getting a shout out here with yet another fucked up logo. It's, again, the little tendrils coming off, and this is definitely a logo that relies less on the symmetry we're talking about. You know, there's a natural symmetry because it's just one word, but it's not purposely symmetrical. You know, when we talk about, you know, going back to a band like Signs of Abnormality, where the letters on either side of the logo have nearly identical tendrils and flourishes coming off of them. You know, Suffocation's logo, every letter kind of has its own thing going on. There's not as much symmetry in this logo as we've seen in some of the other logos we've talked about. Even Dark Throne, as fucked up of a nervous system it looks like, there's some symmetry there. It's not perfectly symmetrical, but it is, we'll call it complementary on either side.
Yeah, it's in a fucked up way, it's pleasing to the eye. There's some bit of feng shui to this logo.
Yes.
But Suffocation, it is more so, it looks like broken glass to me. Yeah. It looks like someone just punched right through a pane of glass and like this is the cracks in the glass now. Or even like a spider's web. Like that's kind of what this logo invokes for me. And again, it's something that just fits the music oh so well. Now, getting into the more complicated tiers of the intermediate level, we've got a band like Archspire. Again, talking about bands that love to just hit us with these 9 million mile an hour fucking bass drum patterns. The band Archspire is just right fucking up there. Drone Corpse Aviator, Involuntary Doppelganger with... Like, who the fuck comes up with that name? Involuntary doppelganger. Any doppelganger is involuntary. You're supposed to run if you see your doppelganger. So I would hope that they're involuntary. I love that fucking name so much. Calamus Will Animate is another great fucking song. I've talked about Into the Golden Mouth of Ruin before. That was the song that really introduced me to Archspire. And Dean Lamb's guitar work with Archspire is fucking great too. He has a really, really cool YouTube channel. He and his wife just play like different levels of fucking death metal guitar. It's so fucking insane. I love the two of them. They're so fucking funny together. And yeah, Archspire is just a really fun fucking band. But this is now, again, going back to like this weaponized, this looks like a shield or like a gauntlet maybe.
Yeah.
And they have the symmetry in it, but now it's like it has this cool organic sort of flow to it as well, with the A that runs into the line that runs through the A into the R, the top of the C. You even have it coming out at the end on the E of their logo. It's, again, very oddly pleasing to the eye.
Yes.
And the one outlier is the S right in the fucking middle. It's always that middle letter that it's like, okay, if it's not an O, it's going to look kind of fucked up. How are we going to make this work?
I think they fucking nailed it, though, with the H and the P on either side. That with the extended spears, I guess, at the bottom of the logo, it's you have just enough of a point on the S that it's almost like that's the accent. Your eye is drawn to the very pointy bottom of the shield, I guess we can call it.
It kind of looks like a shield.
It's originally, I thought maybe it was like a fist going down with like really sharp like brass knuckles or something.
Okay.
Like that too. It could be used for. Or like points on like the hilt of a sword or something like that.
Sure.
But yeah, it's definitely a very symmetrical logo and very pleasing to the metalhead's eye. With how
it looks like what it sounds like. Archspire.
Yeah.
Spire, you know, like it embodies that really, really well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a cool fucking logo.
Yeah, to make the whole concept of this episode easy, it's just a bunch of logos that we thought were really fucking ridiculous and really fucking cool. And another band that really embodies that with their logo is the band Artificial Brain. This gets into the more organic stuff that Chris was talking about at the beginning of the episode. And when you talk about tendrils, this fucking logo, it looks like those tumors that people get where it's just a bunch of like hair and teeth, and it kind of skeeves me out, and at the same time it's very artistic. It's very pretty for a crazy logo. It looks a lot like so there were these commercials when we were growing up in the 90s for like this rainbow marker that you could get. It looked almost like a bar of soap. And you would paint on this piece of paper that they would give you, but it would make like these rainbow fucking shapes. Do you know at all what I'm talking about?
So I'm trying to remember, because there's two things I remember. One of them I had, and one of them I didn't. And I think the thing you're talking about I didn't have, because the paint was physically on this brush, but the paint was rainbow, and you did that. There was another thing that they had that had like black ink trapped between like a clear piece of plastic and then like a tie-dye background, and you could use a thing to design that. But when we got it, the black ink, I don't know if we got a defective one or if the product was just a piece of shit, because the ink inside, it almost had like congealed together and was solid, and you couldn't spread it to reveal the tie-dye underneath. So like we would try a little bit and it just didn't fucking work. So I don't think that's what you're talking about. I think you're talking about the other thing that was, it was like it was a white brush you dipped in like already rainbow paint, and then you could make like fucking butterflies and rainbows and flowers with it.
So now I don't know that that's what Artificial Brain was going after, but that's what it says to me. And they also had like a challenge where the letters that make up the middle of the logo, the point of symmetry there, should not go together, but they found a way to make it fucking work. And bravo to them. So earlier on in the episode, I mentioned that there were going to be a a couple bands on here that have a really odd connection to us, one of them being Revocation and Dan Gargiulo. Artificial Brain is the other band that I was talking about, and their guitarist, John LaCastro. Another fucking Five Towns alum who, you know, Chris and I knew. Again, someone else that I had shared a couple of classes with and guitar ensembles with. And he and Dan were really good friends. I think Dan has done a couple stints with Artificial Brain. And these two guys, when you hear them playing guitar together, it's fascinating because we've talked about guitar duos and how crazy it is to see two people who speak the same musical language getting together. That's what these guys have. So although they were in two separate bands, it's so cool to have seen a shared musical language like right in front of me.
Yeah.
And for them to both be in these crazy ass extreme, almost proggy extreme metal bands. Artificial Brain's songs Celestial Cyst, the song Artificial Brain by the band Artificial Brain, and Absorbing Black Ignition. Really cool fucking places to start out if you want to listen to some like intense proggy black death metal. I don't know if that's another genre that we're creating there, but it's a good fucking time listening to them, and they're a really cool fucking band by some really cool fucking people, also from New York. Now, did you know that before me sharing any of that?
I had no idea. I did bare minimum research, especially on the bands that you had listed, but it's, you know, I had no idea. And like, even as you say the names, I'm like, yeah, I think I remember those guys. Because like, even though we hung out, we weren't in any of the same fucking classes.
We were in separate departments.
We were in completely different majors. We didn't have a single class together. We just fucking hung out and listened to obnoxious music together in the cafeteria or the courtyard. And
Chris made a really stupid, self-deprecating joke, and I laughed.
Yes.
That's how we became friends.
Yeah, that was it. That was it. One more thing I want to say about this logo for Artificial Brain, and I know I don't think you were a wrestling fan that would recognize it, but it kind of looks like the logo that Goldberg had on his shoulder, where he had this like crazy little tribal thing going on over there.
Yeah.
And yeah, their logo kind of looks like an extrapolation of that.
Yeah.
That's the vibes
I can see that.
getting.
Oh, you said Goldberg. In my head, I thought Gold Dust. Two totally different wrestlers.
Very different wrestlers. Vastly different wrestlers.
But it just points out to the fact that I have to go and revisit my wrestling history. Chris, who's another band that you would say fits in really well with this kind of intermediate tier of crazy-ass Rorschach logos?
One band that I found that their logo is moderately legible is the band Tomb Mold. They're another death metal band, kind of in the style of Cannibal Corpse, at least musically and vocally. I already talked about how Revocation is death metal without the guttural growls. Tomb Mold has that. A couple songs I listened to from them, Beg for Life and Planetary Clairvoyance off of the album Planetary Clairvoyance. They also have a song in the game Cyberpunk 2077. I think that's the name of it.
Nice.
Yeah, Adaptive Manipulator. And I think it was written specifically for the game, or at least hasn't been released on another album, because they haven't released an album since the game came out. So
okay,
that was pretty cool to see that.
Seeing their logo in green, in like slime green, just works so fucking well for the name, especially for the name Tomb Mold.
Yeah, I specifically found a green picture because the album Planetary Clairvoyance, their logo is in green, and that's the version of the logo I saw, and I'm like, this is nice and fucked up, and it looks like mold. Like, it looks like mold growing on
my
a
asthma's
brick
acting
wall.
up as I stare at it.
Yeah, we're all gonna die looking at this logo. But yeah, it's like we're saying, the T is a challenge. But if you know it says tomb mold, you know, and you can kind of see the O, the M, and the B. So if you're, you know, using your critical thinking, you can figure out what it says. So it's definitely...
Mold is hard to pick out. Yeah. Mold is hard to pick out of that. But the T looks more like a fucking... What are those trees in Florida? Why can't I fucking think of them? Not a coconut tree.
No, I didn't think you were
palm
talking
trees. Palm trees. Yeah. That's what I meant. The T looks like a fucking palm tree.
I've got fucking palm leaves on my shirt right now.
Yeah, there you go.
But yeah, I can kind of see it. At first I thought you were going to say it looked like those, although I don't know how many of them are in Florida, like those willows you see in like swamps or like maybe in like the bayou or like something like that.
I mean, the bottom of the logo, the dripping of the said tomb mold kind of looks like that, I guess. But no, it looks more like fucking, it looks a lot like Tarman from Return of the Living Dead. That's what it fucking looks like just melting tar at the bottom of the fucking logo. It's disgusting. I love it. And I'm sure that, again, this is another band that sounds exactly as nasty as the fucking logo would have you think.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like I'm saying, it's good death metal, and I think the logo tells you what kind of band you're about to listen to.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. What I love about death metal is this idea of just like pushing the boundaries and being just as fucked up as you can possibly be. So when I found the band Short Bus Pileup, holy fuck. I was like, this is a band that knows exactly what they're fucking doing. I loved this fucking name. Their songs, Urethral Myasia, Gagging on Dick, and Stench of Burning Flesh. Yeah, it's what you would fucking expect. Yeah. It's like really early Cannibal Corpse. And it's disgusting sounding, and their logo looks like they just coughed it up into their palm. Yeah. I can't make out Short Bus Pileup from the logo. So here's where we start to get into like ripping flesh territory. I don't know. It's very much like, if you're telling me that that's what that logo says, I'm just going to fucking believe you.
See, the longer I look at it, I see Short Bus Pileup in there. I see it in there, you know.
Okay.
It's the tendrils that stick out, the top two tendrils on either side, those are your S's in Short Bus, you know. And
there's a sentence I never thought I'd hear in my life.
But it's, you know, I think what's fun about the logo and the band and a song like, what was it, Gagging on Dick? It makes me think of some of the other, you know, kind of grindcore bands I found that were like purposely as many fucked up words in a row as possible.
Yeah.
You know, like it was like someone was playing Mad Libs to be as messed up as possible.
Yeah.
And they came up with Short Bus Pileup and their song Gagging on Dick. Like,
it's like whenever I play Jackbox and someone's like, name a cereal that you'd never want to share with your grandma, and it's like Gagging on Dick.
Yeah. Yeah. So
that's exactly what it feels like. Yeah.
And I think based on the name of the band, based on the logo, based on the song titles, I think they're telling you exactly who they are. This logo was coughed up by someone who has tuberculosis. And now you get to hear a band that named themselves Short Bus Pileup. Like, that's such a like 90s or early 2000s edgelord type of thing.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like,
but a lot of these bands are. Yeah. Like you said, like how many fucking bands had the word necrotic or necrophile in their fucking catalogs? And I was like, yes, I love it. Anytime I see that, it's like necrotic longing for rotting flesh. It's like, we got so many variations off of that title, and it makes me laugh every time I fucking see it. Chris, give us another band that kind of makes you gag a little bit. Not on dick, but just gag in general.
That's a very different podcast. Another band that I think very much matches the energy that Short Bus Pileup is bringing us right now is the band Putridity. They're very much a grindcore band, obnoxious use of pinch harmonics. Every other fucking note is a pinch harmonic. It got old immediately. But it was so obnoxious.
It's squealcore.
Yeah, it was just some of the most obnoxious sounding music. And to match the obnoxious music with the obnoxious band name, you have song names like Sodomize Epileptic Chunks. You have Syphilic Menstrual Rejection. And then my personal favorite Putridity song, Cannibalistic Post-Climax Flesh Consumption.
You've got post-nut clarity, and then you've got that.
So it is just some of the most extreme music. But what's really interesting is that their logo isn't the spit of blood and phlegm that you normally expect. Honestly, in a really fucked up way, now that I look at it, it looks like the scars of someone who cuts themselves. Like, that's what it looks like as I look at it. But yeah, looking at this logo, it is just a bunch of straight lines. Again, it is symmetrical. Why do I keep forgetting that fucking word? But looking at this logo, I have struggled for the past 10 seconds to find the P, and I finally figured out they didn't connect the whole stem of the P. They used the stylistic choice to break it up for whatever fucking reason. But yeah, it's the longer I look at it, I see that it says Putridity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, now you see it.
Now that you say that, yeah.
Now you see it. The triangle above the U, now you see it. It's, in some ways, it almost doesn't inform what kind of band you're about to listen to. Because with, a band called Putridity, songs like Cannibalistic Post-Climax Flesh Consumption, you expect a logo that just looks like a mess of flesh and nerve endings and blood and dripping God knows what.
Yeah.
And instead you have a rough but very pointy logo. Yeah. And so, but I think what the pointiness that you see in thrash and even revocation is it's thicker lines. These thin lines, like I'm saying, they look like scars. They look like cuts. They look like someone just sliced and diced into somebody's back to make this logo. And so it's interesting how even though it's fucked up music and fucked up song titles and subject matter, the logo doesn't 100% inform that to the listener.
Right. Yeah, they're going to be surprised when they check these guys out. If they're just going based off of the logo to try and inform what they're in for.
So a band whose logo I think very much does inform what you're about to listen to is Guttural Secrete. Again, more grindcore, more obnoxious pinch harmonics. They have songs.
Dude, I was so fucking right about my squealcore theory. I just didn't know these bands yet.
They have songs like Nourishing the Spoil, Coprophilic Asphyxia, and Inhaling Corpulency. Yeah.
Okay.
It's fucked up. And their logo looks like a mess. That looks like the aftermath
guttural secretion.
Yes, that looks like guttural secretion. It looks like the aftermath of the coprophilic asphyxia. It just is so nasty looking. It doesn't have the tendrils, it has the dripping. It has some sort of bodily fluid, no one knows what, but some sort of bodily fluid just dripping all over it. It looks like it is made out of the insides of someone or multiple someones. Yes. And it's just dripping in the hand of whoever's holding it.
Yeah, for sure. And it's another one where it takes a minute or two of you looking at it for you to really get it. And to me, it looks like splatter against a wall. It looks like splatter inside like a really damp tunnel. And the dripping at the bottom is less bodily fluid and more like moss or just disgustingness, like swamp guts or something like that. I don't know if they had an EP back in the day called Swamp Guts, but they should have. Yeah, it's, again, another one where it's like, this is not pretty stuff. It's very purposefully disgusting. Yeah. And you keep saying that phrase, like, it looks like a mess, and it does. That's exactly what it looks like. It just looks like something that's not gonna be enjoyable. And would you say that the music really fits with their logo?
Oh, absolutely. Like I'm saying, it is grindcore, very much in a similar style as Putridity. It is very obnoxious, very grating, very much for a very specific audience who loves this type of shit. I'm not sure if I'm in that audience, but it wasn't bad, but it was definitely, like, I hesitate to say disgusting, but I feel like that's the best way to describe it, because it's so nasty, and it does things in music that, like, you shouldn't be doing, because it's just like, I feel like I'm having a revelation here.
Okay.
About grindcore. Right. And how disgusting the music is, how disgusting the logos are, how disgusting the songs are. It's like you're being force-fed the music. It is just, the track starts, and maybe there's clips of, like, someone speaking from a movie or TV show, and then it is just, like, maximum amounts of clipping and just all of the double bass and the snares and the guitars and the bass, and maybe you hear some guttural growls that counts as vocals somewhere in there. It is just force-feeding you the most extreme style of metal anyone could ever listen to. And I think that's why also what is fun about it is that the songs tend to be really short. You know, these two bands reminded me a little bit of the Berserker. You know, their logo, very easy to read, but it is that style of music where it is forcing you to listen to an extreme style of music in a song that lasts about 90 seconds. Yeah. And it is just the most tense 90 seconds of your life when you listen to that song.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Because it's, like you said, you're being bombarded with everything all at once. So you're not seeing it coming beforehand. You get no warning. The track starts and you're bombarded for 90 seconds and then it's done. And then you're moving on to another track that's bombarding you for another 90 seconds. So you never have a minute to breathe. Yep. And especially when you start to get into not even just all the songs that are super, super fast are obviously fucking great. But then you start to get into the really sludgy and disgusting sounding stuff. And when we talk about guttural vocals, like, I feel like you and I have talked about gutturals before, but these guys hit a whole new level of it where it's like borderline farm animal fucking noises. It's like there's no discernible note within any of that, but it fits. It fits the fucking music. A band that does that perfectly is Sanguis Sagubog. And I don't know that I'm saying that right. No one can get a fucking proper pronunciation out of these guys. It's kind of their thing. So they are, when I first heard them, it was simply because I saw the logo and I said, I don't know what the fuck that says, but I'm going to find out who this is. You look at this logo and it looks like my hair in the drain. After a shower, after like shampoo and conditioning day. That's what it looks like. It looks like the shit that I have to pull out of the drain or my wife is going to yell at me. And it's nasty. It's nasty. So I saw this logo and I was like, I have to listen to them now. So I put them on and I hear a song like Gourd in the Chest. I hear a song like Dragged by a Truck. Dead as Shit, which that song is fucking fun. Black Market Vasectomy and Skin Cushion. It's exactly what the logo looks like. It's exactly what you expect. And to make matters worse, they like take pride in using the Saint Anger snare sound and just making it fucking work. They wear it like a badge of fucking honor. And it's so nasty, but it fits so well with the rest of the music. And it's just, it is at times slow and clumpy. It's like oatmeal that's gone bad, if that can happen. And that's what listening to them feels like, where their logo looks like a clump of hair in a drain. They sound like
a clump of oatmeal in the drain.
A clump of oatmeal in the drain mixed in with the fucking hair. Yeah, and you're just like, oh no.
Oh no, my shower oatmeal is getting into the drain.
Yeah, exactly. What am I supposed to do with this now? I better exfoliate. Oh man, when we're talking about fucking logos where it's like, this does not say what you're telling me it says. Undeath probably takes the fucking cake out of the bands that I found. They are old school, like harkening back to the days of like Florida death metal, like very early Cannibal Corpse. They're fucking great. They're another band that I've seen their logo for like months now. And finally I had the chance to check them out and I'm like, this is really fucking good. So Chris, I think you would really fucking dig them if you haven't already listened to them. But their songs, Head Splintered in 7 Ways, Defiled Again, Fiend for Corpses, Phantasmal Festering, and Enhancing the Dead are just a good time in the most disgusting way possible. Where like you've had a good time, but you feel really guilty afterwards. It's like, no, this shouldn't have felt this way. And you're wondering why you went down this path. But they look like all the characters of Gwar had been thrown into a blender, spit back out, and someone saw that and threw up all over them. And that's what their fucking logo looks like. Looking through their logo into the deeper meaning. It's just a lot of viscera and just like nastiness. It looks like a compost pile from hell.
Yeah.
And I kind of fucking love it.
It really does. I think what adds to the inability to decipher or read whatever the fuck it says is it looks like about half the logo doesn't say anything. It's just it's just crazy ass designs in the bottom half of the logo. And I think that's what adds so much confusion about some of these logos is how many unnecessary lines can I draw? And someone just looked at the band Undeath and decided, I'm going to draw all of the unnecessary lines. No one is going to be able to read this logo.
I've got some stocked up. Here's the rest of the ones I have.
Yeah. So it's definitely, I love your analysis that it is all of the members of Gwar blended and vomited back up. Like that is the perfect description of what I'm looking at. I couldn't think of a more perfect description.
Chris, if I had to ask you though, for a band where you were like, this absolutely does not say that, you're lying to me right now, what band would that be?
This is a tough choice because I've found a couple, but I think the band I want to talk about first is Wolves in the Throne Room.
They are so fucking good. I'm so happy you picked them. They are good.
Like, I listen to them. So it's very much black metal. But I'm listening to Mountain Magic. And it's fucking acoustic guitars and orchestra sounds. And we've talked about how in thrash metal, acoustic guitar is very important in thrash metal. Acoustic guitar, honestly, I think is pretty important in black metal as well. And I loved how they were able to combine these sounds to create this music. So, like I said, the song Mountain Magic, also Born from the Serpent's Eye and The Old Ones Are With Us, really great songs, really great music. Their logo does not say their name. I refuse to believe that says Wolves in the Throne Room.
Within you there are two wolves. They're both in the throne room. But you can't decipher.
Neither of them are in this logo, all right? I don't care where the wolves are. They're not in the logo. This is See, I know right before we started recording, we were trying to decipher this, and I think part of my problem is the letters, some of them are sideways, some of them are probably backwards, some might be upside down. This might be a logo that you need to like rotate as you read it. Like, I feel like this is like an escape room clue or some shit. Like, I don't know what I'm looking at here.
Like the maze in The Shining.
But to more accurately describe it as just saying you're lying to me, it's just a bunch of very thin lines. You know, I think we've talked a lot about where so many of these logos look like drawings or art.
Yes.
You know, it's depicting bodily fluids or mold or some sort of mysterious liquid dripping down the side of a tunnel. This just looks like a bunch of lines thrown together. Like this, this looks like a toddler coloring in their like Disney Frozen coloring book, and they're just taking a purple crayon all over Olaf. And this is what
nothing
they
is inside of the lines.
It's that's what the logo looks like. And if someone told me that this logo was designed by like the lead guitarist's 3-year-old nephew, I'd believe them, because that's what it looks like. It looks like scribbles.
It's what makes it unnerving, and I say that and truly mean it. There's something about the logo that makes me anxious, but it's the thin lines.
Yeah,
it's the thin lines, and the fact that like the tendrils at the bottom and the dripping or whatever they have going on down there is just, it looks like it's just stippled on.
Yeah,
it does look like they spent the bare minimum amount of time designing the logo, and somehow it just got thrown together and just fucking works.
Yeah. As I mentioned, there was a couple bands I found where I refused to believe their logo actually represents their name.
Right.
If you thought Wolves of the Throne Room was bad, you guys better sit down for this one. Because there is absolutely no way in any universe does the logo for Bessarabian Hills actually say their band name in this logo. This logo looks like, again, I'm going back to like a human being's nervous system, or maybe a really zoomed out road map, or maybe even like... So one of their album covers, I believe it's Enveloped in the Velvet Cloak of Midnight. The title track is pretty good, as well as the song Phantasmagoria. Bessarabian Hills is a atmospheric black metal band.
Right.
So this album has like 4 tracks on it. They're all like exactly 9 minutes or 11 minutes long, all of them being 4 songs. And the logo is in the sky on this album cover. So on this image, it looks like a cloud having a lightning storm.
Yeah.
And it turns out that's the band's logo. And I refuse to believe that it says Bessarabian Hills in this logo. The only thing that like I can guess is maybe it says it in a different language, but even that, like,
maybe
I didn't do enough research to confirm that. I'm just making things up. But like,
it looks like a spot on someone's lung is what it fucking looks like. Like anytime a doctor throws up an X-ray on like an NBC drama, it's this image.
Yeah, I'd believe it.
I've seen that logo in an episode of House before, is what I'm trying to say. And it's not jaundice.
But yeah, it's I don't know what this logo is telling you. I don't think it's telling you what the band sounds like. Because like I said, they're atmospheric black metal, which means they're playing the same arpeggio for 9 minutes. And like they're playing it slow. I don't think there's any vocals. It's just instrumental music. The music isn't bad, but I'm going to roast the shit out of this logo because I refuse to believe that this logo is anything other than more scribbles.
It's like Wolves in the Throne Room. You can kind of say like, okay, if you turn a letter this way or turn a letter that way, you can kind of see where that would come from. But you're not getting any of that within this logo at all. This does look like, you know, a nervous system or like, you know, the brain trying to communicate with itself.
Yeah.
And there's absolutely no fucking way that those letters are in there.
Yeah, like it's, as I'm looking at it, I don't know if I'm just like tricking myself into seeing logos, but at the same time, what I'm seeing looks like, I don't even know. Like it is a mess. It's honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the band knows for a fact that it doesn't say their name in it. And it's actually just a prank that they're pulling on all of the elitist black metal fans who are like, what do you mean you can't read this logo? It clearly says that. And the band is playing along like, yeah, it totally says that. When really everyone's just pranking the metal elitists that claim to see the band's name in this logo.
Yeah. You can't fucking make that out. You cannot convince me that that name is actually in there somewhere. Chris, what's another example of a band that's just fucking having a giggle at us with their fucking logo?
Another band whose logo took me by surprise because of how asymmetrical it is the band Triumvir Foul. They are a death metal band, but like very extreme. And they also don't really do the guttural vocals. It was more of a harsh screamed vocals. But they have songs like Flesh Diocese, Presage, and then also Domini Befallen, parentheses, to Doom. So it was...
Just to be clear.
Yes, just to be clear, we are falling to doom. We're not just like tripping over one of these logos that looks like a tree branch or a twig on the walking path.
No, you are that guy who fucking snapped his ACL, his NBC, his CVS, and all that shit walking down the stairs at that fucking baseball game.
But yeah, it's, like I said, the music is good. It's a very extreme style of death metal, but this logo, like I'm saying, I saw the logo first, and I thought that is so not symmetrical and not like anything else I'd seen. This was one of the first logos I actually found. And it has a lot of the things we've been talking about. A lot of tendrils, a lot of what looks like more viscera dripping from it. But it just kind of, it like is big and then gets smaller and then like has a tail at the end. And it's just... an absolute mess. And I think I see the F in foul. That's about it.
I can see the F. I can see the F, and I can kind of sort of make out the T and the L at the end. But to me, it just looks like Florida moss.
Yeah.
Like I'm on a boat trying to escape a couple of fucking gators.
That is very
That's
much
what it looks like.
Yes, that is. It is just dripping off of something. You don't know what it is. You don't know where it came from. You're pretty sure it's poisonous, and if you breathe, if you inhale too much of it, you're definitely going to have a disease. But yeah, this logo is just, I think... This is a logo that does a very good job of telling you what kind of band you're about to listen to because of how asymmetrical it is, because of how illegible it is, and because of just how gross it looks. You know what you're getting into with this kind of band.
Yeah, for sure. I love stuff like that, though, because it's like you're taking the absolutely ridiculous and just capitalizing on it. Like, do you think that a lot of these bands, it's seen as like a badge of honor to just have the most fucking nutso bizarro fucking logo possible? Like, to the point where, Bessarabian Hills absolutely does not have their name in their logo.
I think there is that sort of pride in having a logo that is hard to read. I think, so many of these bands I hadn't heard of until I sought out bands with fucked up and unreadable logos. Right. If you've got 6 bands playing a show and it's 6 of these bands, you want to be the band that has the most fucked up logo on the poster. Yeah. You want to be the band that people are like, okay, I can read that. What the fuck does that say? And I think there is a sort of kind of one-upsmanship going on. And I think, we talk about a band like Dark Throne, who had that fucked up logo. And I think it is the idea that we've always talked about, taking what someone did before to the next level. And that's what all these bands are doing, is that because so many of these bands, I'm finding bands that are releasing music in the past, 5 years or 10 years. These are, relatively new bands when you can compare them to a band like Dark Throne. And so when you see Dark Throne's fucked up logo, and you're like, I need to do something worse than that, worse in a good way. You get these kinds of logos that are just taking that dripping, visceral mess and taking it to the absolute extreme.
For sure. For sure.
And a band who just tried to fucking copy Dark Throne is Cattle Decapitation.
I do like Cattle Decap, I'll have to admit.
I am not surprised, and I don't mean that as an insult.
Please elaborate.
And I'll get into it more.
Right now, you are the Rorschach, and I am trying to decipher exactly what you mean.
When I listened to Cattle Decapitation, one of the things I noticed is that at least a few songs I listened to, which were songs like Scourge of the Offspring, We Eat Our Young, and Bring Back the Plague, there was a lot of syncopated rhythms, meaning that they were hitting beats on the offbeat. And it was very dissonant and kind of obnoxious. And I know that between the two of us, you are someone that more appreciates progressive metal, which will do funny time signatures and syncopated beats. So for you to say that you like a black metal band or a death metal band, that to me just sounded like you're trying too hard to be syncopated and proggy. That's why it doesn't surprise me you like this band, because it does so many of the things that I know you like in other styles of music. So it makes sense you would like death metal that does the same thing. But that's not for me. I prefer the force-feeding grindcore 90 seconds of blast beats, and then the song is over, and then it starts all over again with the next song.
It's like mukbang in music form. Just disgusting.
Talking about grindcore, one band that I found that is very much like grindcore-ish death metal. I hesitate to say it's full-on death metal, but I also hesitate to say it's grindcore. It seems to be combining the two. That's the band Blood Incantation. Some of the songs I really liked from them were Slave Species of the Gods, The Giza Power Plant, and Inner Paths, parentheses, to Outer Space. The one
again with the parentheses.
Yes, gotta have the parentheses. I know their album logo, their album cover, I forget the name of the album, but it features, I believe, all 3 songs I just mentioned, has an alien on the cover. So it's very much like a space alien invasion, death metal. But their logo, honestly, is kind of right up there with Basarabian Hills and Wolves in the Throne Room. I'm not sure this actually says Blood Incantation. It is just a bunch of vertical fucked up lines. Now that I look at it, maybe I see the D in blood.
Yeah, but I feel like this is one of those where like you take the logo and you lay it flat. Like you look at the very bottom of the logo, you lay it flat away from you, and then you can see it, like one of those things. That I could see.
I could see that. I could see that. But yeah, the logo is, again, it has some symmetry. It's not perfectly symmetrical, but it has some symmetry, but it's still very kind of gross and organic looking. Like it looks like this logo might start moving, Like it looks...
I was going to say it looks like stretch marks, but I like yours more.
Like it looks like, what I'm realizing now, what I think some of these logos make me think of? I've brought it up before, but I've fallen out and fell behind a show called Critical Role, which is on YouTube, and they stream on Twitch. It's voice actors playing Dungeons & Dragons. At the end of their second campaign, they went to a city that was merging with the residents of the city, and so it was like a flesh city and like living city, and there was and there was a lot of that kind of like cosmic body horror going on at the end of this campaign. This looks like what that city looked like in my mind. Like if you added some like mouths and eyeballs to this logo, that's what I imagine this city looked like. It was like a fucking floating flesh city, and that's what this is. This is a floating flesh logo. That's what this is. And it's just about to start squirming away if you don't...
No, I don't like it.
If you don't like trap this in like a petri dish or something, that's about to get out of the lab and like turn into the next horror movie.
Yeah, I don't like it. It's a Steve Kostansky sort of like, for anyone that's seen The Void, it's one of his fucking creations. Chris, you're hitting us with like banger after banger with these fucking logos. Please give us another one. Subject us to another one of your crazy ass Rorschach logos, please.
All right. So if we take a look at the band Spectral Voice, they're kind of a, I kind of think of them as like an ethereal black metal band. I wouldn't go so far as to say that they are atmospheric black metal in the way that Bessarabian Hills are, but they kind of do some of the same things. Very long songs, only 5 tracks on the album I was listening to. A couple of those songs were Thresholds Beyond, which is the title track, as well as Visions of Psychic Dismemberment. You know, it was kind of this cosmic horror black metal.
Okay.
And when you look at the logo, I'm not sure you get that vibe from the logo. I think this is more of the very organic, very fleshy type of logo, but you can actually read what it says. You know, of some of the logos I've been talking about, this is kind of, we're climbing back up the iceberg, and we're getting into a logo that we can actually read without staring at it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So
attempting to come back up for some air, pretty much.
Pretty much. But yeah, it's a logo that I think kind of informs the style of music, but not to the extent some of these others. You know, like I said, although I mean, I think when you hear a song title like Visions of Psychic Dismemberment, even though it has a very cosmic ethereal vibe or sound, the content very much matches what the logo is representing, which is flesh that was probably torn apart psychically.
A la Carrie.
And then one more band I want to talk about, their logo is definitely fucked up, is another band that kind of has that cosmic and ethereal black metal feel. Again, very long songs. Again, only 5 tracks on the album. That is the band Mare Cognitum. They have songs like Heliacal Rising, Antaresian, and The First Point of Aries. This is very much space-based, and their logo looks like solar flares. You know, I keep saying things look like a mess. This isn't a mess. This is an apocalypse coming at us from the sun. Like, this is about to wipe out every electronic on Earth. And their album covers match this energy. Like the one album I was listening to that has Heliacal Rising on it has like an energy field coming from one planet to another, or like one planet is consuming another planet. It is very space horror, cosmic horror, and I think this logo definitely matches that energy and informs what kind of band you're about to listen to.
Yeah, it looks like they had dripped black ink into a bunch of oil and water, and then someone went bloop, 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 and like stuck their finger in and mixed it around, and that's what they used as the logo. Like, that's what I kind of see, is some of that like watery aspect. It's a weightless kind of aspect that it has to it, and it's very, I can see the cosmic, I can see the solar flare. It looks like the fucking storms on Jupiter. Yep. Like, that's exactly what it fucking looks like.
They took the red spot on Jupiter and made it their logo.
Yes, exactly. Chris, we have had no shortage of absolutely ridiculous Rorschach-style paintings turned into heavy metal logos in this episode, but please, for the love of God and all that is holy, give us one more sick and fucking twisted band logo as your suggestion this week.
So my suggestion this week is the band Spawn of Possession and their 2012 album In Curso. Spawn of Possession is a very extreme melodic death metal band. Has very proggy feel to it. I think you might really like this band.
Nice.
Some of the standout tracks on this album is the first track, which is very much an intro, Abodement. Another really great track, Where Angels Go, Demons Follow. Bodiless Sleeper is another really good song. And the first song I heard from them is the closing track of this album, Apparition. This song starts with an organ, and then some other instruments come in, some like stringed orchestra instruments come in, then the guitars come in, and the song is composed like classical music. There's no riffs being played, there's no like tremolo picked rhythms being played or that type of thing. It is just the entire song sounds like classical music, but it is death metal. And it is so cool, and I loved finding this band. Their logo is also really cool. Kind of borders the edges of, is it readable? Is it not? I think once you know it says Spawn of Possession, you know it says Spawn of Possession. But until you know what it says, you might see the word of, and that's about it.
Yeah.
What I also loved about it is that especially parts of the letter N in Possession, it looks like thorns. And it looks like a pile of thorns or a thorny bush, and is very dangerous looking, not something you would want to fall into while, you know, going on a hike.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think it definitely gives you the vibe of what kind of band you're about to hear. It is a very extreme logo, and like I said, this is a very extreme melodic death metal band. And so yeah, that's why my suggestion this week is everyone check out Spawn of Possession and their 2012 album In Curso.
That's awesome. I definitely have to check them out, especially if they're leaning into some of those proggy elements that I definitely love. So for my suggestion this week, I want to tell everyone to run out and listen to the band Cerebral Rot. When we talk about logos that you're like, I guess I can kind of see it, like Chris said, once you know that's what it says, it's easier to pick things out. But when you first look at it, it looks like a line of trees, especially the, I guess that's supposed to be the B.
Yes.
In the middle of Cerebral looks like a tall, like, pine tree or something, and it just gives this really like very organic and natural feel to it, and I absolutely fucking love this logo. It's so cool, and it looks so blown out. Like, some of the details, you just really do not get them in there, and that's what makes the logo kind of indecipherable. But their songs, Cerebral Rot, Primordial Soul, Wreaking Septic Mass, which I fucking love that title, and Vile Yoke of Contagion. Those are just some songs to start out with. Go ahead and do yourself a favor. Check out the band Cerebral Rot and just take a couple minutes taking a look at their logo and see if you have a hankering to like walk into the forest naked or something. Chris, this was a lot of fun, and thankfully you came up with a cool compilation image for all of our listeners to follow along with. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you'll be able to follow along and see all the different band logos as Chris has compiled them for us. But we're not going to tell you exactly what it says, so you'll have to follow along and just guess like the rest of us. And with that, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Scrap Metal Podcast. The time has come for us to pack up our gear, but we'll be back to rock out with you in the next episode.
Stay metal, everyone.
Good night!